All right, so after covering the debate between Mehdi Hassan and Piers Morgan, I had a little bit of an influx of people um, giving me some ideas for some videos to watch, and somebody turned me on to the Lowkey versus Piers Morgan debate. I'll be completely upfront with you guys. I really didn't know who Lowkey was. Um, I still kind of don't. I had watched the little intro to the debate here, but that's all I wanted to check out before making this video because I wanted to go into this fresh. So, yeah, I am pretty much in learning mode right now. So why not just go for it and yeah, let's see what is going to be said.
Given that you categorize what Israel did.
What is happening? Seriously? I just had that pulled up. What the hell?
Hezbollah with the pages. You said it was an act of terror. Was what Hamas did on October the 7th an act of terrorism?
The killing by the Israeli Air Force of Israeli citizens was an act of terror.
Well, you haven't answered my question.
But I'm answering your question.
No, I'm talking about mass murder of people on October the 7th.
By the Israeli military.
See, it's just absurd.
As I said to you then, the picture is not clear of what exactly Hamas did to Israeli.
You are incredibly ill-informed about this.
I'm not concerned about whether you think or don't think that credibility. I have a question for you.
Oh, hang on.
Based on
you
what
stop
you
asking
just
questions
said
for a
about
minute. At some point, okay, you're going to answer some of my questions. Because I don't cover this from supporting either over the other.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah. Well, many people know.
Yeah, so that's all I saw. So now it's all fresh. Real quick, I might as well do this before the interview. Lowkey. He's a British rapper. Okay, Kareem Dennis, better known as Lowkey. He is a rapper from London. Okie dokie. Well, I'll check out his stuff. I'm into hip hop, so kind of surprised that he has not popped up on my radar. Because I'm not that out of, that space. So interesting.
Know Lowkey as a rapper, a playwright, and a poet, but it's fair to say even more known as a fierce advocate for the rights of Palestinians and a fierce critic of Israel. The first and only time we've spoken was in the immediate aftermath of October the 7th. Israel and its supporters couldn't see beyond the horrors of that atrocities. Critics were angered by how quickly it eclipsed decades of Palestinian suffering and heralded a great deal more. A lot has happened since then, but has anything really changed? Kareem Dennis, better known as Lowkey, joins me in the studio now. And from Washington, D.C., I'm joined by the Lebanese-American author and
okay, so this is post-Mehdi Hassan debate.
Activist Brigitte Gabriel. Well, welcome to both of you. Lowkey, we never met, so it's good to meet you. We had a pretty fiery exchange last time when I was in New York and you were here. Passions were running very high. I think it's fair to say from my experience of debates since, there's been no dilution in the way people feel about this. If anything, I think views are getting more and more entrenched as it goes on. What is your feeling about where we are now with this war and indeed the widening conflict with Israel apparently planning a ground incursion into Lebanon?
Well, that initial interview, there were three things that I stated which have since come clearly to fruition. So the first thing that I stated was that Mark Regev belongs in The Hague. Israel is currently in the ICJ charged with genocide. I also said that what Israel was doing in Gaza in an accumulative way over decades would amount with the military operation that they were about to launch to genocide. And the third thing that I said, which has also now been proven to have been the case, is that the Israeli military unfortunately implemented the Hannibal Directive on October 7th. And that, just so viewers are aware, is when Israel, of course, it was initially developed in Lebanon while trying to suppress the Lebanese population and stop them from battling the Israeli occupation. And it's whereby Israel takes measures to kill the captives who are Israeli that have been taken by the other side. Now that happened on October 7th, and it's since been proven in 3 different cases. It happened, unfortunately, after...
It's been denied by Israel, to be clear.
It hasn't, though. It's been denied by certain upper echelons of the Israeli political establishment, but there have been key figures within the Air Force that have acknowledged that this has taken place. It's also been revealed by the Al Jazeera investigation, and other places too have gone very deep into it.
But you wouldn't say that the absolute vast majority of people killed and wounded on October the 7th were indeed killed and wounded by Hamas, because apart from anything else, Hamas were both posting about it and filming it as they were doing it.
I think actually the majority of people that were killed on October 7th and off the back of the October 7th were the Palestinian fighters that entered into what is considered to be Israel.
Yeah, but that's just based on numbers.
We know because they were killed, they were run over by cars, their bodies were dismembered. There's footage that came out.
Okay, But if these guys were insurgents going in, I'm sorry, man. Like, if you're trying to get me to feel bad for that,
out of them being killed.
No.
You feel sorry for the Hamas terrorists
No,
who
I'm
came in?
stating objective
oh, well, yeah, okay, that's an objective fact.
facts as a journalist that has researched this topic.
But what about the 1,200 people who they murdered and the 7,000 they wounded?
No. Hundreds of those people were killed when Israel implemented the Hannibal Directive.
That's simply not true.
That
It simply is true,
It isn't.
and I encourage you, in the spirit of journalistic inquiry and curiosity, to really look that up.
It's already
because
been thoroughly investigated.
It absolutely has not.
But
been.
it has, Lowkey.
It's been investigated by Al Jazeera. It's been investigated by trustable news sources that have found this to be the case.
No, it's not true that hundreds
Absolutely.
of people in those
saw the
named
footage.
casualty numbers on the Israeli side
were killed by Israel.
Killed by Israel.
No, it's a fact. It's a
not-
documented
not
fact.
a fact.
It's a documented fact. And you know what else? If you were to study those cars which were put forth as
doesn't seem like it's documented fact as much as it is a little bit of a it's almost like a conspiracy. Okay, I hate to say it, because most of the IDF is coming out and saying that, like, the Hannibal Directive is no longer instituted, but yeah, to prevent abduction in this case. Hold on. Yeah, it had been amended by 2013. Because I'm gonna just state that I'm gonna look into this stuff and not just blanket believe either side on this one, because again, that seemed a little like, I don't want to say biased, because he's obviously biased on where he's coming from, but it seemed I mean, it does say ABC News reported the use of Hannibal Directive on October 7th.
as evidence that Hamas had killed those people fleeing the Nova Festival. The order came directly from the Israeli Air Force. This is a
Yeah. Okay. Wow. So it is saying that they instituted they essentially made an order in July 2024 that the Hannibal Directive was used in 2023's Hamas-led attack on Israel. And then, yeah, again on October 7th.
Hannibal. This is a dead zone. No cars will
Did you
pass.
watch the
Those
documentary?
cars
Did you watch
were
the
hit by
documentary
Apache.
last week on BBC Two
No.
about the music festival? Right, you
No.
literally see Hamas fighters with their GoPros going from car to car, murdering people.
That happened. Yeah, that happened.
Why are you trying to diminish the scale of what was going on?
I've just said that happened. That doesn't equate to diminishing what you've just
doesn't
stated.
say hundreds of
You're
hundreds.
diminishing Apache helicopters bombing
Yes.
cars that contained
That's all that
civilians.
can be said about
You're
that. Yeah,
diminishing
that's what's
all
happening
of the
here.
Israeli captives that have been killed by Israeli airstrikes. Israeli captives have come out of Gaza and said very clearly that actually they were scared of being killed by Israeli airstrikes.
Why are
They
there
were not.
hostages at all?
Well, this is, of course, an issue of 70 years of occupation, of dispossession, of ethnic cleansing,
You
of
wouldn't support the
attritional
taking of hostages,
genocide.
including Holocaust survivors and babies. You wouldn't support that.
I wouldn't take hostages, no.
So should they hand them back?
I think if you look historically at where the return of actual hostages has happened, you look at the case of Gilad Shalit, this was a case where an Israeli soldier was given back in exchange for the release of Palestinian prisoners. What you've actually seen in this case is a massive increase of Palestinian prisoners who are being tortured. There's been examples of rape within Israeli military camps. The rapists have come out and become celebrities within Israeli society. 68% of the Israeli population say they oppose the prosecuting of people that have been implicated in rape.
That's kind of weird that like this barbarianism is just kind of spreading throughout the Israeli population, and they're just becoming more and more okay with, you know, their loss of humanity. I mean, we kind of did the same thing during the September 11th attacks.
System. And
Which this is why conspiracies started to abound, because of the whole like, well, are they trying to just get us to be pro-war? Is this how they are? Because that was the whole thing where they're just like, yeah, we were in an extended time of peace, and you had a bunch of these contractors that were like, we need a war because we need money.
if you really look at it, Israel has far more chance of returning hostages by negotiating for their release than by airstriking them. What Israel has done as part of this campaign is airstrike and kill its own captives. The captives.
How would you have responded on October the 8th if you were running the Israeli government?
Ultimately,
the biggest terror attack on your people ever.
Ultimately.
Yeah, he does need to have an answer for this.
Ultimately.
I hate to say it like that too, because honestly, it is ridiculous to kind of just go around asking anybody what they would do differently if they're not part of that government. But he is speaking with a level of authority on this to the point where it is like, yeah, well, it seems like you do have a different answer and a different idea. And it is like, if you do, please share it with the world so we can start enacting those.
It is within the interests of everybody, especially those who identify as Israelis currently, to end Zionism. Zionism.
Okay, well, that's unrealistic.
Has dispossessed.
Sorry. That's like asking you to denounce your Islamic beliefs. What?
And
I'm sorry. Just because they're wrong doesn't mean that you're just going to change your mind.
Disempowered and killed people on an industrial scale. Its maintenance requires 4 generations of Palestinian refugees scattered throughout the Middle East, the highest population of refugees there is in the world. Its maintenance requires the constant repression of Palestinian hopes for a better world.
Which I think is completely wrong. So I believe all Palestinian people should have exactly the same rights as you and I and every Israeli.
And that requires the end of Zionism. So therefore you support the end of Zionism.
Well, I don't agree with what has clearly been a form of occupation, okay? But putting that to one side, I also don't agree
then apply
with
that
Hamas,
to both,
Hezbollah,
then apply that to both sides.
And the Houthis, funded by Iran, armed by Iran, launching wave after years and decades of terror attacks on Israel.
Do they have air forces? Do they have... Let me ask you a question.
Listen, just because it's guerrilla warfare doesn't make it any better, dude.
Let me ask you a question.
I hate that approach to things. It's just like, well, this is their only way of retaliation. It's like, okay, but to be pushing these violent agendas, like, it does stem from somewhere. And the fact is, like, they have declared this a holy war. They went on the record and declared this a holy war. So
air forces and air defenses.
Forgive me and my American sentiments for just being like, yeah, not okay with that.
Do they have air forces and air defenses?
It sounds like you're defending what they do.
No, I'm saying there is a complete difference between one of the most powerful...
Just informing you about, like, facts is not inherently supporting it, by the way. Like, I do understand that.
...powerful armies in the world, which has literally a key unit within the Israeli military, Unit 9900, is the visual unit which uses satellites in the sky that can pick off a bit of chewing gum on your shoe, okay? You're talking about actors that are shooting...
I'm sorry. I just think of those spy movies. Enhance.
Rockets which do not have precise targeting against one of the most powerful air forces in the world. F-15s, F-16s, and F-35. You're talking about asymmetrical warfare. But you know the thing that Israel doesn't remember, and which Israel has to know and must know, that winning a war is not about killing on an industrial scale the weakest among the population you are targeting, which Israel excels at, which is the essence of Zionism. Winning a war is about the largest amount of people being convinced of your viewpoint. If we use that metric to understand this war, Israel has lost in Gaza and it will lose in Lebanon because Israel has more enemies around the world than ever before. More people are critical of Zionism than ever before. More people understand it to be essentially an anti-life ideology, which is causing mass human suffering.
But Lowkey, at the same time, Hamas, Hezbollah are wedded, and make no secret of being wedded, to the destruction of Israel. Destruction. That is a nihilistic form of genocide.
They've been declaring that forever.
Every genocide that its supporters, like you,
since, the 70s,
say is being waged against their people, they are explicit. We want the destruction of Israel. And they have tried to enact this on October the 7th. And Hezbollah's response the next day, within hours, was to unleash rockets on Israel as well and to carry on doing it for a year. At some point, Israel obviously was going to respond with massive force to the biggest attack on its people. Obviously, they were going to do that. Hamas knew they would do that. Iran, who were funding it, knew they were going to do that. Hezbollah knew they would do that. Hezbollah knew if they kept rattling the Israel cage with their rockets, that they would get a response of the kind we're seeing now. What they underestimated is that Israel would be quite as successful as they're being right now with Hezbollah and taking out all its command leadership. And you can feel that the momentum has switched now, where Israeli people, in particular, and all the polling, are now beginning to go back to supporting Netanyahu because they believe...
Yeah. It's almost like that psyop worked.
rightly or wrongly, but they believe Hamas and Hezbollah when they say we want to destroy Israel. They believe it, and they believe that they have to defend themselves. Do you understand that?
I have a response. The Likud platform, which is its charter, states very clearly, there will be no Palestinian sovereignty between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea. The Likud charter calls for the complete obliteration of Palestine and all of the rights of Palestinians. That is the core of the issue. One group that you're talking about.
Okay, so you could argue you both have to get rid of those ideals and then work together. I know it's a really simplistic, pacifistic idea, but...
don't have air defenses and do not have an air force.
So give up your air force, give up your air defenses, give up your defenses. But that, again, this is my problem with the ceasefire talks, when all of a sudden, then like when you get to like the bottom of the issue with like the Palestinian supporters, all of a sudden they're just like, well, then we have to just give them that Palestinian land, or to give them the land, and then make it a one-state solution. And essentially, like, they don't want to say it, but genocide the Jews. Like, listen, I'm not going to pretend I'm like Lowkey here, where I have all the information and that I can make these decisions for anybody, but this is just my, base understanding of the issue.
Internationally isolated.
As you know.
And are internationally isolated.
And yet they were
the other one has the support of the United States, which has around 1,000 military bases around the world. Right. And of course, all of the largesse from literally the US, after Israel has taken its terrorist actions, which the former head of the CIA, Leon Panetta, called it a form of terrorism in Lebanon with the pager attack. Right after that,
no, that is.
The US has said it's going to give $8.7 billion in military aid to Israel.
Was what Hamas did on October the 7th an act?
He always does this.
Terrorism.
I would say that the killing by the Israeli Air Force of Israeli citizens was an act of terror.
Then that's a yes.
I would say that Palestinians who have lived in camps for several generations, they're not in our shoes. They're not living the kind of lives that we live in the places
but you haven't answered my question.
But I'm answering your question. To a Palestinian who has suffered their entire...
Yeah, you're justifying it, though. That's the problem. You're doing the long way around, where you're like, yes, it is terrorism, but this is why they are doing it. Which, fine, I guess, enlighten us, but that
life under the boot of Israeli
that doesn't make it sound like you're supporting it any less.
Occupation. What you view as justified will not be what they view as justified.
I'll ask you what
the very same way that you denounce figures and...
Oh, we could all argue that justified has a different meaning for any of this stuff. Like, again, like, is it justified if you blow up somebody's house to then go kill that other person? Like, where do you draw the line for this eye for an eye bullshit?
Define them depending to these particular legislatory definitions throughout.
So, and I'm not even just applying it to this conflict. I'm saying, like, with that mind process, then
history, the very same people.
I understand.
You compared yourself to Nelson Mandela.
I understand.
The ANC were absolutely treated in exactly the same way. The FLN were treated in exactly the same way. The Vietnamese were treated in exactly the same way.
Okay.
I'm speaking directly to your point. In fact, William Cuffey of the Chartists, these were people that mobilized for hundreds of years to get the right to vote, that didn't own property and were not landed gentry in this country. Do you know what happened to them? They were imprisoned as terrorists. Okay. They were massacred at the Manchester.
I know the same history you do, but I simply asked you, given that you categorize what Israel did to Hezbollah with the pages.
Yeah, to be fair, the history lesson wasn't necessary in that context for that question.
You said it was
it was informative.
Act of terror. Whether you think what Hamas did to Israelis on October 7th was an act of terror.
As I said to you then, the picture is not clear of what exactly Hamas did to Israelis. There were lies about 40 beheaded babies that were pumped out all over the place. Yeah. No. There was so much fake news and lies on what happened on October 7th. How can we actually say...
Have you watched the Hamas footage that they took themselves?
Seen bits and pieces.
Yeah, well, then I'm sorry, man. If you're going to be that committed to it, then you got to see both sides equally. Like... This is the reason that I don't want to, I'll be completely honest. This is the reason that I don't search this stuff out on Twitter. This is the reason that I don't,
bits and pieces. Yeah. Literally bits and pieces of people's bodies.
No.
Because do you understand how much human suffering you have to subject yourself to in order to get, like, that full picture? Which again, if we do that on a mass scale, fine. But...
No,
you know what? And I know I'm going to take some flack for that.
I don't understand.
You haven't seen it.
I don't understand.
Why don't you want to see it?
I'm happy to see it, but what I don't...
Well, you could apply that to Piers Morgan. How come he doesn't want to see, the dead babies? Like I was just saying that I don't want to, but apply that to your argument, Piers.
No, as in I would like to see these things. But what I'm saying to you that you are seeming to minimize, in my opinion, is the fact that the Hannibal Directive was implemented. If the Hannibal Directive was implemented, if a fake news campaign was rolled out... I'm about to read
you something.
Read.
A July 2024 Haaretz investigation revealed the IDF ordered the Hannibal Directive to be used, adding, Haaretz does not know whether or how many civilians and soldiers were hit due to these procedures, but the cumulative data indicates that many of the kidnapped people were at risk exposed to Israeli gunfire, even if they weren't the target. In other words, there may well have been a directive issued, says Haaretz, but nobody knows whether anyone was even hit or killed.
Dude, now you're just being like you're doing the semantics with it, where it's like, no, they admitted that the directive was established, and what he had just said. I mean, come on, you got to look at both sides of the story, so you can kind of find that middle where it's like, yeah, they probably did. Yes, they probably killed their own, and he's got a point. However, I think his numbers are a little off, but...
Look at the cars. Look at the cars fleeing the Nova Festival.
I've watched the video footage of what Hamas did to people in the cars. But here's my point, Lowkey. Here's my point, Lowkey. Let me finish. My point is, you have extrapolated this and you've taken it to hundreds of people in the 1,200 that were said to have been killed were killed by Israelis.
Yeah.
There is absolutely...
That's documented.
There is zero evidence.
No, there is.
The hundreds of people were
killed. Read the Electronic Intifada. Read the Grey Zone. Read Al Jazeera. Look at the Al Jazeera documentary. You'll see
in
it
July
there.
This year, there is no evidence.
No, actually, there is evidence. And
why didn't they...
And Haaretz pointed some of it out.
God, this just really does establish the need for unbiased fucking journalism, because he's saying Al Jazeera, but Al Jazeera, they pad the Saudi government. They what are you talking about, guys?
Early on.
They didn't. I've just read it.
Like, yes, Al Jazeera is so trustworthy up until you get to Doha.
I think they pointed out.
If anything happens in Doha, we're not. Yeah, what do you mean? Blood money. What? Jamal Khashoggi? We reported on that fairly.
An airstrike was called in.
I've just read to you what they found.
Well, you've read one article which clearly shows that the Hannibal Directive was implemented.
A Haaretz investigation.
No, it's not even an article. He was actually quoting the investigation. I'll give Piers that.
If an Apache helicopter shoots at a car, what happens to the car? Do you think Hamas? Let me ask you a question. Do you think that the use of AK-47s would cause the damage that was done to those cars fleeing the Nova Festival?
It wouldn't. I think because you have chosen not to view the footage that Hamas broadcast to the world, you are incredibly ill-informed about this. And my advice to you, given how...
you could apply that to both of you then.
Given how engaged you are in this whole thing.
That was kind of my point. With how engaged he is, then you would think that he would go and review all the footage just to make sure that he's like, yeah, because... He's got this. We're all human. At some point, your humanity is going to show through it, especially if you care about these things, especially if you actually give a damn about any human besides yourself.
I'm staggered you just haven't watched that footage. Then you wouldn't be asking me questions.
But to the wider issue of what we're talking about, this is far, far bigger than one day.
Yeah, but I'm only asking you.
Yeah, but you guys are both using... examples from that day. So I hate to say it, you're no better off than he is on that one.
It's become a religion. October 7th. Let's be clear.
What? No. And if you're going to apply that kind of thought process, then apply it to everybody else who's going the other fucking way. Come on.
You view what?
Like, you guys are really doing the 9/11 never forget kind of bullshit. Like, and I'm just going to say, like, yeah, that never forget to be a Zionist.
Israel.
Or never forget to be xenophobic.
To Hezbollah, who'd be firing rockets at them all year, displacing 70,000 people in northern Israel. You view what they did with those pages.
And I'm applying that to Israel too here.
As an act of terrorism. I simply said to you, do you think what Hamas did on October 7th is an act of terrorism? And you've been really struggling to give a straight answer. You're trying to distract me by saying Hannibal Directive.
Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. Do you believe in the provision of the Genocide Convention?
It would be nice if he could give us just like...
I do not believe what Israel's doing is waging genocide.
That's not what I'm asking.
Do you know why?
That's not what I'm asking you. It's not what I'm asking you. What I'm asking you is Article 1 of the Convention on the Prevention and the Punishment of Genocide says that all parties that are part of this are under obligation to prevent the occurrence of genocide and punish those responsible for its commission. There is a sound argument. There is a sound argument.
How many people live in Gaza?
2 million people live in Gaza.
How many have been killed?
Well, I mean, the Lancet Medical Journal has put forth the assertion that 200,000 people's lives have been ended by Israel's operation.
Well, it's completely untrue.
But that's the Lancet Medical Journal.
not.
So the Lancet.
Apply that to what you were saying about his thing with Haaretz, though. It's so easy just to be like, well, your source, it's only one source. No, that's a bad faith argument right there, and I'm calling that out because that's a bad way to fucking debate the point that you're trying to make.
Medical Journal is a more trustworthy source than you. The Palestinians are saying 42,000 as of today.
The Palestinian Hamas run.
No, but that's not how genocide works. But that's not how genocide works, Piers.
No.
But you know that's not how genocide works.
No, I'm about to tell you.
But you know that's not how genocide works.
So you don't believe the Palestinian Health Authority numbers?
No, I believe them. But what I'm saying
You think 5 times as many people have been killed?
I've literally just quoted you what the Lancet Medical Association has said, and I've also quoted to you what they have said.
You know why it
there.
matters,
But
right?
that's also not how genocide works.
I share a lot of your misgivings about the scale and proportionate response of what's been going on in Gaza, and I've said that repeatedly. But I don't think it constitutes a genocide because Israel has the power.
What?
Should it want to kill all 2 million?
But this
let
is
me
the
finish.
argument.
Let me
That's not
finish.
what constitutes
Let me
genocide,
finish.
though.
They have the power to eradicate every single Palestinian.
Was genocide committed on the Aboriginal people of Australia?
I'm not going to go over the whole.
They still.
No, no. That's a great argument. Like what Piers is saying here is fucking bonkers, but I leave it to a Brit to say this shit.
So therefore, your argument is that they were not subject to genocide following the arrival of Captain Cook.
But do you accept that what Hamas and Hezbollah, when they say they want destruction of Israel, that is the purest personification of genocide?
I have clearly shown you that the Likud Charter states within it that the Palestinians will have no sovereignty.
Why do you never answer any questions about the other
river
side, though,
and the sea?
I ask both.
Because there's a causal connection between what has happened.
But you distract on everything I say.
You're talking to me about organisations that were formed to fight the Israeli occupation. Their response to that occupation is what it is. The occupation exists first. Zionism exists first. What comes after it is a product of that social imbalance.
Oh, man. See, this is the slippery slope, guys, because at what point do you apply the boundary on his argument? And, like, I've been going back and forth with this one with the land of, Israel and how it was divided with the UN Charter and all that. So how far back do we go? Do we give it back to Egypt? Do we you can make this argument for every little piece of land, including America. At what point do we give that away and give it back to, the Native Americans? Because, we're just as fucking guilty. So this is one of those, and I hate to call it this, but it really is like a rainbows and lollipops kind of fucking mentality where you're just like, oh, well, in a perfect world, we would give all the reparations, we would give all the land back, we would do all this stuff, but then you ignore how moving that many people and like the outrage and the wars that would break out from just that and the suffering, like they never can put a price or like the actual like human suffering totals to like that kind of mentality. It's just like, again, I want this is how it should be. Everything else be damned because this is how it is now, and look at what happened to get here.
Categorize what they've been doing as resistance, not terrorism.
They are resistance groups, as the vast majority of humanity is represented by governments that define them as resistance factions, including the government of Switzerland. What's more neutral than the government of Switzerland?
I mean, Britain did classify us as terrorists during the Revolutionary War.
It doesn't prescribe these organisations, for the record.
So to be clear, you think they're resistance, not terrorists?
Yes.
Okay, we got there. Let me bring in Bridget Gabriel. Bridget, you listen to what Lowkey has to say. He's not alone in this thought. I've heard this from many pro-Palestinian.
Oh my God, she looks just like Sherry O'Terry from SNL.
Palestinian guests on Uncensored in the last year. What is your response?
Well, I want to start with the accusation of the occupation. Israel was minding its own business ever since it existed. It reached out to the Arabic world. It wanted to have peace with the Arabic world. In 1964, when the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, was founded, the West Bank was in the hands of Jordan. It was Jordan. And Gaza was in the hands of Egypt. It was Egypt. So the PLO was founded in 1964, not because of any occupation. They wanted to drive the Jews into the sea and get rid of every single Jew in the Middle East. Israel tried repeating. The only reason the Palestinians lost that in 67 and they lost Gaza and the West Bank is because they preempted an attack against Israel. And over again, Israel reached out to them to make peace with them. In 2000, Ehud Barak offered them 97% of the territories back, and they refused it again and again and again. In 2005, when Israel withdrew out of Gaza, they said,
I mean, okay, she's bringing up some decent points here, because every time they have kind of made the push for peace, Hamas has kind of been like, no, from the river to the sea. No, from the river to the sea. No, from the river to the sea. What do you not understand about this?
Okay, we're going to give you your own state. We're going to give you your own territory. Israel forcibly removed its own people fighting the IDF by force, removed them out of Gaza.
Because just a thought, like, so we can make the arguments that we owe them, this, abolishing the open air prison, all of this kind of stuff. But again, human suffering, like, man, and this is where I just, as a pacifist, am trust me, I understand that what I believe is fucking unrealistic, like, just in humanity itself. Like, we are a pretty violent species. So, we can have collective peace, but there's always going to be something.
Not only to remove the people, they dug out dead Jews' bones from the
But my broader point to this was that both sides kind of need to come to the table to, promote a peaceful resolution. But when you have one side constantly just being like, nope, hard line, and then they can't recognize that they're doing the same thing with Zionism, and like, they're not wrong. They're not wrong about these people's beliefs, but they're doing the same thing.
cemeteries, because they knew exactly what the Palestinians are going to do to the cemeteries. So in 2005, when Israel withdrew out of Gaza, there wasn't one Jew alive or dead in Gaza. They turned over the key to them and said, okay, great, now build your own place. You are independent. I know people that Israel even left them the greenhouses. Israel was exporting 50 million flowers to Europe in 2004 out of Gaza. The greenhouses, the fruits, the vegetables, the flowers. They left them to the Palestinians so the Palestinians can start they can have an industry where they can support themselves. I know a businessman from New York who even raised $14 million to make sure the Palestinians will be able to get paid salaries as they move over and they continue building the greenhouses. And what did the Palestinians do within 24 hours after Israel withdrew? Not only they destroyed every single Jewish synagogue in the area, they destroyed the greenhouse.
That is pretty fucking stupid. Okay? Like, why? Just because you were... this is blood. This is... we can't accept these bloody greenhouses because, that would just provide us the ability to have, monetization of our crops and also feed our people. What?
Is ripped out.
Like, if she's right about that, that's fucked up.
The pipe and even stole the copper out of the pipe. And then they had an election.
That's... It's like you're talking about Detroit.
So, in their first election, the first woman elected to the cabinet of Hamas was a woman by the name Nidal, the mother of al-Muqawama, they called her, the mother of the resistance. And she ran on the platform, I killed 3 of my sons, because she had videos of her sons, she dressing them in suicide bombers to go kill Israelis. She said, I already gave up 3 for the cause. I have another 7 to give. That's why she was elected. So that's a democratic election for Hamas. Israel did not put the Palestinians in a prison in Gaza. Hamas put the Palestinians in a prison in Gaza. Gaza could have been turned into Singapore. They had the money. They had more money pouring into the Palestinian territories and still do from all over the world.
I am very interested to hear his retort to this.
And what did they do with it? Build a tunnel infrastructure underneath bigger than the subway system in New York instead of helping their people. So those who scream about the occupation, the Palestinians have brought this on themselves again and again and again.
Wow.
Dude.
But do you accept that Palestinians should have the same human rights as the rest of us?
Absolutely. All humans are equal in the eyes of God.
How can they do that? Okay, but here's the thing, but when it comes to this issue of occupation, I was very struck.
Yeah, I'm glad that Piers is pushing back on this.
At the start of the response to October the 7th, that very quickly, Israel was able to turn on or off the tap of energy, the tap of water, the food supply, etc. That is only achievable if you are effectively occupying another country. Otherwise, you're not able to do it. So Israel has had this control over Gaza and the people that live there, which to me does not afford those people the same human rights as Israelis enjoy. It's inarguable, because if they didn't have that control, they couldn't turn on and off the energy or the water supplies.
That's a great point.
But why did Israel get to this point? Remember, in 2005, they gave them everything, and they said, we are out. The Israelis even fought among themselves because, some people did not.
No, so don't get me wrong. I think Hamas squandered all the money they were given.
I mean, we can sit there and
being the
argue
enemy
that.
of its own people. And when Hamas did what they did on October the 7th.
And on it, I really would like to know what he thinks about
They
that.
knew it was immediately sentencing to death thousands of their own people in the process. They knew that, right? So I think Hamas has got to go. I think Netanyahu has to go as well, and his right-wing headbang cabinet members who do speak in a genocidal way. None of this
Fucking base, Pierce. I mean,
is ever
that's
going to
good.
lead to
That's a
peace.
nice
Let
take.
me ask you, Brigitte, about Lowkey's claims about October the 7th. He says that there was this Hannibal directive. It's been much speculated. Harit says that they found evidence there was. The IDF has never admitted there was a Hannibal directive, but it is
Stop taking the IDF at their word. At what point have you just kind of gone, yeah, you know what? Because even with the debate with Mehdi Hassan, he even admitted that it's reprehensible that they're not letting journalists in. So how the fuck are you going to constantly take them at their word when it's convenient for you?
possible in the fog of war that day that I guess some of the casualties came because of Israeli fire. We don't know that. But Lowkey wants people to believe hundreds and hundreds of people who died that day.
Sorry, every time he says Lowkey, I do immediately just picture Tom Hiddleston just like doing his little.
They, on the Israeli side, were killed by Israel.
I don't believe that. That has not proven. And if I have to choose between belief
He just said the whole Haaretz report, and for you to just blanket go, don't believe it because it's convenient for my argument.
the Hamas talking point, who control the Ministry of Information, and the Israeli IDF, I would believe the IDF because I have lived in Israel as a
Because you're Israeli.
Lebanese. At one point, I had a home in Lebanon, a home in Israel, and my boyfriend who lived in the West Bank at that time. And I worked as a journalist. And knowing how the IDF operates and knowing how
Good for you.
the Israeli military operates, they operate by rules. They don't invent information like Hamas does. And
She said that with a fucking straight face. What?
when you are in
What
the thick
the
of things like
fuck?
what happened on October 7th, a lot of people do not know a lot of the facts that happened on the ground. But we do know one thing, that Hamas committed such atrocities, and we're so proud filming it and showing it that will give you goosebumps, that a lot of people can get sick, they cannot view it. And I'm shocked that Lowkey hasn't even viewed the footage. You have to view the footage to understand the monstrosity of the crimes that were committed on that day.
Yeah, I mean, I watched this BBC documentary.
I caught a brief little bit of it. It was on I think it's on Netflix now. But yeah, I turned it off pretty quickly.
Which had all the footage from the
And I'll be honest, it's just legit. Like I'm not into watching I'm not gonna call it murder porn or whatever the fuck, but that kind of stuff. Like
music festival. And honestly,
and yes, I'm burying my head, whatever. Like, sorry, I actually kind of want to enjoy my life, the little time I have on this fucking planet.
Lowkey, it was one of the most
Everybody that loves to just sit in Doomerville and just be like, why can't you just be depressed like us because we think about world events that we can't change?
sickening 2 hours of my entire life.
Have you been on social media for the past year?
Sorry, and like I hate that shit. Like, because then at that point you're questioning my, are you genuinely, do you care about these? Yeah, I care about genocide. I care about people getting murdered. But what have you done? What have you especially done? Tell me that I haven't apparently taken my time out that makes you better on the issue.
Yes, I have.
You have seen a constant stream of mutilated
Yes, I have.
children. You have
Yes, I
seen a
have.
constant stream
Yes.
of people being lifted up out
Which
of
you're very
the rubble.
keen- which you're
how,
very-
how can you
which
how can
you-
you even bring into the conversation 2 hours of footage in comparison to 12 months and 77 years of this type of treatment?
So the
Palestinians?
deaths of
But I have a question.
Well, that's if you keep bringing up the 77 years. Listen, your argument kind of loses steam when you guys, like both of them, when they both get into the history of it. It's just, and he didn't acknowledge anything she said about Hamas doing the thing where it's like, yeah, we burned greenhouses because we said fuck it, we don't want to have any ties to Israel, or we're not going to take the blood money from this or whatever the hell.
For the guy.
I'm sorry, like to blatantly ignore Hamas's faults in this is also kind of disingenuous to your fucking argument.
I would like to ask this question. Now, the organization Act for America, which you represent and are a part of, seems to be quite the patriotic outfit. It's also been criticized widely as Islamophobic. But I have some questions about the finances of your organization. It's funded by the Fairbrook Foundation, which has funded the Central Fund of Israel, the Zionist Organization of America, and also illegal settlements in the West Bank. In addition to that, your organization,
by who?
Act for America, has been funded by the Becker Foundation, which has funded Christians United for Israel and the Israel Project. In addition to that, your organization was also funded by the Emez Foundation, which funded the Israel Project, the Central Fund of Israel, and the Zionist Organization of America. How, in any way, do you stand for peace when the organization which you front and presumably are employed by is also funded by organizations that are invested in illegal settlement in the West Bank?
Actually, my organization, which I run and I'm the founder and chairman, I not only work for it, was founded after September 11th to protect America against the threat of radical Islamic terrorism.
It shares funders. It shares funders with those building illegal settlements in the West Bank.
You already spoke your mind. You already spoke your mind. Now it's my time to answer. My organization was founded to impact policy in the United States to protect the United States from the threat of radical Islamic terrorism coming from Al Qaeda, ISIS, Hezbollah, or whoever happened the terrorist organization are. We work with Muslims. We have Muslims on our board. We have Muslims who are members. We had every single conference we always had a keynote speaker who is Muslim that speaks because they care about America.
You know what? I feel like we're getting. Listen, I feel like we're getting.
Not let me finish.
Bridget, I feel like
You both got a pull deck.
we're getting a bit. I feel like we're getting a bit. Look, fascinating though it is the makeup of your business. It's not really the point of what this debate is, right?
Right. It's not the point exactly.
But
the point
the point I would
No,
make,
that means get
Bridget,
to
is
it. That means actually address his question instead of just gaslighting him.
I do think Lowkey has a good point about the settlements, right?
Yeah.
What is going on in the West Bank with this rapid, aggressive expansion of settlements is completely outrageous. It's illegal. It's wrong. It shouldn't be happening. Why is it happening?
Sorry, you cut out. You mean the settlements in the West Bank?
Yeah, the expansion of settlements on the West Bank in the last year has been completely outrageous.
Well, look, there's a radical wing within Israel that wants to expand the settlements, and the settlements is an issue. I agree with you. They are
Yeah, but not even just his funding, but guys like Ben Gvir, like you can sit there and prop up him and Benjamin Netanyahu for this, like
same
people who are very upset about
You're
the
funded
settlement.
by the same.
it's kind of it's the same wing.
Organizations.
What does this have to do with the funding? What we're talking about? They are Americans who support the funding of protecting the United States, not Israel. Our work is devoted to protecting the United States.
No, that's not his point.
We have the documents. They
Let's
fund settlements.
let's get back to the bigger
please.
picture. So, Bridget, do you
No, I hate to say it. She lost that one because he very calmly and coolly was just like, no, we've got the receipts. And she's just like, please, what's that prove?
condemn the expansion of the settlements in the last year on the West Bank?
Say that again?
Do you condemn the expansion of the
I feel like she's doing that conveniently.
settlements on the West Bank in the past year?
Yes, I do. I think they are going overboard with the settlement.
Okay,
I think somebody needs to revisit looking at the settlement and how they
Okay,
are
good. Then that's good. Lowkey, do you condemn what Hamas did on October the 7th?
I have a question for you.
Well, hang on.
I hate to play it, but come on, man. He's not even just looking for the sound bite. He is trying to kind of prove that you guys can both agree to disagree on this.
Asking
said about
questions for a
settlements.
minute.
I'll answer your question in a
Okay,
second.
she's made an admission that she condemns it.
No, she
Well, okay, not to agree to disagree, but you know what I mean. He wanted a capitulation on both sides.
condemns the expansion
Lowkey,
of settlements.
fine. Lowkey.
And these people also
Okay,
fund
Lowkey.
her.
At some point, you are going to. Lowkey, you are going to answer some of my questions.
Which I have done.
Okay, do you condemn what Hamas did?
You've already asked me that.
Not directly. You haven't answered.
I will not condemn people based on Israeli military talking
Okay,
points.
good.
But I have.
Dude, come on.
You don't condemn mass murder.
This is why, like, I'm sorry. This is a detriment to your fucking your message. Like, this really is.
You don't condemn mass murder.
Obviously, I condemn mass murder.
You won't condemn it by Hamas.
You're talking about a specific political context in which the information
No, I'm
is
talking
not
about mass
clear
murder of people on October the 7th.
by the Israeli military.
See, it's just absurd.
No, I hate to agree with Piers on this one, but he's doing a semantics game here.
I have a question for you.
I think you lose all credibility when you say
I have a question.
Yeah,
I'm not
no,
concerned.
he kind of does. He kind of does. And I hate that because he's making really good points and really good arguments. But that is a very pig-headed approach to this.
About whether you think or don't think
You
I have
should be.
credibility. It's
I don't come at this from supporting either over the other.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah.
Are you sure about that?
Absolutely.
'Cause I have a
sure.
question. I have a
What's
question.
your question?
Rupert Murdoch,
Yeah.
News Corp International,
Yeah.
which employed you for several years.
Yes.
Which actually
It employs me
is-
now.
These aren't the gotchas you think it is. What is this? The fucking this is your benefactor. This is who controls your talking points. Really? Really? There's zero agency amongst journalists. You know, the fact that and I hate standing up. Like, I'm not exactly a Piers Morgan fan. Okay, like, funny enough, most of my exposure to him early on was from AGT. So, like, I watched some of his when he took over for Larry King, but realistically, I'm not a fan of him. And the fact that you're kind of making him look,
It employs you now.
Yeah.
Okay,
you know, like he's asking good questions here, specifically, and then doing this, where it's just like, Rupert Murdoch, you worked for Rupert Murdoch, so you definitely had an agenda there.
into the issue.
Yes. What
News
do you think
Corp-
the issue is?
News-
I
I'll
saw what you
explain to
tweeted. What does it have to do with me?
Not my tweets. I have a question for you. News Corp International had a charity
I hate to say it, the smug way that he just does the, like, I've got you on this one.
arm, which
I could
funded
see
the
that being-
Jerusalem Foundation, which builds illegal
this got to
settlements.
do with me?
Illegal settlements in
What's it got to do with
Jerusalem.
me?
Do you condemn Rupert Murdoch?
What's it got to do with me?
Do you condemn Rupert Murdoch?
I'm not talking about Rupert
do you,
Murdoch.
do you condemn
Damn it, that was pretty good.
Rupert Murdoch? This here,
Rupert Murdoch.
this has never been shown on British media. This is a letter from Netanyahu's political office. And Bridget may well recognize the handwriting of Benjamin Netanyahu
Okay.
here. It is a list of individuals that Netanyahu considered to be funders of his political campaign. There is a name on this list. The name is Rupert Murdoch. Your employer.
You know what, Lowkey?
It seems he funded Benjamin Netanyahu.
You know
That's
what?
an issue.
You know what? Like, it's not an issue for me.
It's an issue.
Nobody
and actually,
tells-
Well, no, see, but that actually goes back to my original point. He's sitting there like the gotcha's like, well, Rupert Murdoch, you're not going to say anything about Rupert Murdoch. But this is about Piers Morgan. And, like, he's insinuating again that because Rupert Murdoch is a benefactor of him in some way, that he's going to just be parroting Rupert Murdoch's talking points.
in the
No.
interest of objectivity
Understand one thing.
that you stated.
Rupert
This does make it easier to be an independent journalist. I mean, somewhat,
Murdoch can speak for himself.
as I'm just thinking about that Tim Pool
Got a
thing.
problem with him? Take it up with him.
I do,
I
yeah.
can tell you categorically, he has never had a single conversation with me about
Smug
anything I
oaf.
put on Piers Morgan.
I'm sorry, that's a slappable face right there.
Sam kindly
Ever.
resigned
Ever.
from the Times newspaper
Ever.
because of Murdoch's investments
Fine.
and bias
If
towards
you have a
Israel.
problem,
This
Lowkey,
document, this letter,
you're a rapper,
clearly
right?
shows Benjamin Netanyahu noting
Okay.
Rupert Murdoch, considering him to be a funder of his political campaign.
You're a rapper, yeah?
That's an issue.
You're a rapper. You condemn P. Diddy.
Yes.
Great. You see how easy it is? You take it
Hey,
out of your obsession,
yes.
which is that you hate Israel so much you can't condemn anything.
Yeah, I can admit that he's not making himself look good in this. I'm sorry. Like, to people who need to learn more about this stuff, he is kind of coming across like he's a smug
That
asshole.
people do to them.
We see the situation differently.
Not really. Actually,
My loyalty is to the people.
I
of the
agree with
camps.
you a lot
My
more.
loyalty
I
is to
agree
the-
with you a lot more than you realise.
I
But what I don't agree
myself,
with,
I view myself as loyal to the people of the camps, to the people under the bombs. I do not view myself as loyal to somebody
what
that
things-
would end up on a list of potential
Okay, but take away the bombs, take away the camps, so then who are you loyal to?
funders of Benjamin Netanyahu.
I like Rupert Murdoch enormously. I respect him enormously. And if you
And
have
you
a
won't
problem-
condemn his
if you have a
funding of
problem-
murder of
if you have-
Netanyahu. You won't condemn his funding of
Hey,
Netanyahu.
you don't
and
condemn mass murder.
You don't condemn mass murder.
Oh, I do.
Condemn the Israeli military for mass murder of Israeli captives.
Had you bothered to watch this program for the last year, you would see I've regularly
No,
condemned
it's
them.
not condemnation.
No,
It's
but
not-
you
it's
don't
not
think that
Piers.
what Hamas
It's
did
not
was
Piers.
murder, do you? I think it's resistance.
I think the vast majority of humanity perceive asymmetrical warfare by developed militaries against the vast majority of humanity are post-colonial subjects, Piers. They came out
Kind of throws back to my point. What then? What?
of decolonization.
Okay.
So their conception of these issues is just not the same as yours, unfortunately.
We will have to disagree, but that's fine.
No problem.
All right. It was good to meet you. Thank you for coming in. Brigitte, thank you very much indeed for joining me. I appreciate it too.
Didn't he say he was on a show before?
We'll move on. And listen, the story won't go away. Come back. We'll debate it again.
Thank you.
But remember, I agree with more than you think with what you say.
Okay.
All right. But at some point, you've got to have a little bit of something about you that says that some
Yeah, a little bit of charity on the issue,
things
just
that
a
people
little
did in
bit.
Israel can also be wrong. You don't.
Yeah, no, because that's the thing. He's coming across like no matter what he says, he's just right. No matter he didn't capitulate to anything she said about the Hamas stuff. Like, I'm sorry, that kind of flew in the face. Like when you come on and you're trying to educate people about a certain issue, you can't be this smug about
I
it.
think so.
I mean, you're misrepresenting my. my
Am I?
point of view. Yeah.
You think of one thing
No,
people
you represented yourself that way, unfortunately, just in your demeanor.
have done to Israel is wrong.
I think giving it $8.7 billion in military aid after it's carried out a terrorist attack.
So no attack on Israel has ever been anything but justified.
I think Zionism as a project is unsustainable.
That's not my question.
It's unsustainable.
Can you think of
What do you think about Islamic terrorism? What do you think about jihad? What do you think about the caliphate? I would love to just start asking these questions too.
one
It's
thing?
unsustainable.
Because honest to God, this is the whole like, well, yeah, well, you're going to support Zionism. You're going to support Zionism. Well, then are you supporting a fucking holy war? Be honest.
Is there one thing that's been done to Israel that you think is wrong?
Not right now. I can't think of that.
And that's
Dude, you're fundamentally unserious then at that point.
I'll let you know.
in its way, Lowkey. That's very illuminating.
Yeah, it was. No, that I'm sorry, man. He didn't make himself look good in this. Like, especially that. Man, you want to talk about like a defeat, like getting fucking bodied at the end by yourself? What? Like, come on, man. Like, you're not doing the cause any justice with that kind of engagement, you know? And that it's kind of that's disappointing because what he was saying was it was almost dead on. I mean, he kind of made a great point about the Haaretz stuff. Like, you know what? I'll be completely honest. I really didn't know much about that. I didn't know much about the Hannibal Doctrine until this interview, which, you know, oh my God, fuck me, right? Because you know how anybody in America, like even media, is talking about this stuff. You know, that's just something I'm gonna, you know, kind of beat to the punch here because I get a lot of that. Where it's just like, oh, so you didn't know this? You didn't know this? Well, it's time to educate yourself. Okay, well then fucking give me a link and educate me. So I am always willing to read something. And this is also what pisses me off where they're just like, oh, look at this guy, no convictions. He's a flip-flopper. It's like, you mean I learn new information and change my mind? Huh. It's almost like I practice the scientific method and actually, you know, try to learn new things and admit that I also don't know everything. But apparently that's just the internet. Everybody is a fucking expert on everything and you're just an asshole for not knowing. So, and that's kind of how he came off at the end there. Like, honestly, he did not do himself any favors, specifically with like normie Americans who, you know, you kind of want to reach out to kind of care about this stuff a little bit more. Those are the people you're reaching out to. If you're just going to continue to constantly speak to the echo chamber of the far left that already supports you on these issues, you're never going to move the needle. I'm sorry. That's this idea of just being like, well, I disagree with Zionism. I think it should just be wiped out. It's just like, then I'm sorry, that's a fundamentalist idea. And I don't agree with fundamentalism, period. So, I don't know. This was kind of an interesting one to watch. I guarantee a lot of people are going to disagree with my takes, but if you agree with my takes, hey, you know what? Hit that subscribe button and, you know, look out for some more of this type of content because I do enjoy covering this stuff. And as I said, I enjoy learning new things and new perspectives, but I really don't like when people are just so like, yeah, I thought that Piers Morgan was fucking smug. The way that he ended that interview, if you don't think that he if he did himself, you know, if he didn't do himself a disservice by being so smug, sorry, I was getting kind of riled up there. Then I don't know how to break through to you. Like, if you think that's effective messaging, it's no wonder you guys always get looked at the way you do when you try to discuss these issues because you have to try, like, I know, hot take, you have to try and meet people that are from like the center or even that are Zionists and you got to try and bring these things up. But if you're going to be as combative as Lowkey was there, I don't think you're going to break much new ground. So you just go beat your head against that wall and then just wonder, why doesn't anybody listen to me? What's the definition of insanity again? What? So, but as I was saying, if you like my content, leave a like, comment, subscribe, trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. I really appreciate you guys being here. I'm dead serious. It's awesome. Like I'm kind of like over the fucking moon with that, kind of like seeing the engagement that I've been getting. So, yeah, check out my other content and I'll see you in the next one.